Good evening. It's Monday, March 7th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Another day, another record broken for gas prices in San Diego County. The average price for a gallon of regular is now $5.38, and that's nearly 28 cents more than we were paying just last Friday. While most of us complain about paying that much at the pump, people who drive for a living are especially hurting. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado spent the day with a rideshare driver who says gas prices will force many to quit the job altogether.
It's the dreaded moment of the day. It's gonna hurt.
Tanya Edisval has been a rideshare driver for 5 years, but this is the first time she's ever had to pay almost $6 for a gallon of gasoline.
The gas is $5.78. That's insane amount of money. That's twice as much as it was when I started driving 5 years ago, and I'm making half the money. I used to fill up my tank for about $32 around there. Now it's over $50 to fill up the tank of gas. So of course, everything you're earning just eats into that.
According to AAA, gas prices in San Diego County set records nearly every single day. The average price for a gallon of gas is 55 cents more than a week ago. Edisval says rideshare drivers are on the edge.
I hear a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of drivers who want to strike. There's a lot of frustration. And I even talked to a driver that's living in his car.
She says most people have a misconception that when they pay a high rate, she's pocketing a big part of it. That's not the case.
And I had a passenger that was very upset that he paid $85 for his ride. And I said, wow, that's a lot. And what do you think I got? $18 out of 85. So it's really, really tough. And it makes it harder to justify going out late at night, picking up people who are drunk when you don't get paid good money.
She says she got into the business for the flexibility, the same flexibility that companies like Uber and Lyft tout. But inflation and gas prices that climb by the hour are squeezing her dry.
When everything increases in price, the gas increases, everything around you, your rent, your food, and you can't pay your rent and you can't pay for your food, then where's the flexibility in that? There's no flexibility in being poor. You gotta get every last drop with this kind of pricing, you know?
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
The city of San Diego is making it a priority to build affordable housing with easy access to transit. Locations for the Bridge to Home were revealed today in San Ysidro. Downtown City Heights and Rancho Bernardo will also benefit from more than 600 new units. Some will include a mix of services for those experiencing homelessness.
We talk about housing being, housing being something that just changed people's lives. This is exactly what we're talking about.
More than $30 million from local, state, and federal sources will provide the financing for developers. All of these new homes will be within half a mile of an existing transit line. The first batch will open next year. San Diego Unified's interim superintendent is now its permanent superintendent. The school board announced moments ago it has named Dr. Lamont Jackson to permanently replace Cindy Martin. She resigned late last spring after becoming Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education. The decision to hire Jackson comes after a year-long recruitment and search process that included a diverse group of community leaders who served as advisors to the board. And a new mask policy went into effect today at San Diego State University. The college is modifying it to follow a change in transmission rates in San Diego. And as KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen explains, they're not the only school making changes.
I personally didn't know about it until you told me about it.
Across the San Diego State campus, many students didn't know about the mask policy that went into effect today. But others, like Quentin Wortham, say it's a good change.
It's not like the pandemic is over completely, but I say that we're in a really good spot where, if you are vaccinated, you're more than okay.
Wortham says he doesn't like wearing a mask inside the classroom, but understands the reason for it.
In San Diego State's new updated mask policies, students will still need to wear them in the classroom, but can ditch them at outdoor events or meetings.
The change in the mask mandate came after the CDC designated San Diego's COVID transmission rate as low on Thursday. That's the same reason San Diego Unified lifted its mask mandate on Friday.
We want to make sure that we are always protecting our especially our most vulnerable kids, right? So we are highly recommending that students still wear masks. However, we are not going to be requiring masks after April 4th.
That's the date students return from spring break. The district is also providing students with take-home COVID tests to use before returning to school. Keisha Borden is the president of the Teachers Union, and she says reaction to the policy change was mixed.
We've got folks on both sides of the issue. Some are very happy that masking is no longer required. Some are still very concerned about the health risks.
As for students at SDSU,
I see it as a sign that we're getting out of the pandemic.
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
A solemn milestone for the pandemic. The global death toll for COVID-19 has reached 6 million today. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. It comes 4 months after the world reached 5 million deaths. The U.S. has reported the highest number of deaths, with more than 958,000, followed by Brazil, Russia, and Mexico. But there is some good news. Experts say, based on CDC data, the U.S. may be in for a near normal spring and summer, and say the move from pandemic to endemic appears to be accelerating. If you need more COVID testing kits for you and your family, you can start ordering more from the government website again this week. President Joe Biden mentioned during his State of the Union address that you can order more even if you have already requested tests. The website is covidtests.gov, and you can get 4 additional tests for free. A hotline is also up, and that number is 1-800-232-0233. Russia is intensifying attacks in Ukraine, hitting schools, hospitals, churches, and apartments. The United Nations says more than 1.7 million refugees have fled the violence, but hundreds of thousands of people are trapped without power, food, water, or medical help. Isabel Rosales reports on just how far the West is willing to go to counter Russia.
As anti-war rallies mount in Russia, Russian troops push in on key Ukrainian cities. The goal? Bombard cities into submission.
Дочка погибла в коляске. Меня вытащили и 2 внуков вытащили из-под завалов.
On the ground, Ukraine accusing Russia of violating a ceasefire agreement to allow for civilian evacuations. A Russian airstrike in a suburb of Kyiv Sunday killed an evacuating Ukrainian family, including children.
This is murder, deliberate murder.
Ukraine's president repeatedly calling on the U.S. and NATO to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine, both rejecting this option.
The no-fly zone, that means that if Russian planes violate the zone that's declared, we shoot them down. And that runs the considerable risk of creating a direct conflict between our countries and Russia, and thus a wider war.
The West moving to counter Russia. Along the border, an airfield is serving as a weapons hub, according to a senior Defense Department official. A senior U.S. official saying the U.S. and NATO so far supplying Ukraine with nearly 20,000 anti-tank and anti-air missiles.
God will not forgive. Not today, not tomorrow, never. And instead of forgiveness, there will be judgment.
In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
American officials have identified 3 areas on which the U.S. could soon take action: a ban on Russian oil imports, a declaration of war crimes against Russia, and help deliver Polish fighter jets to Ukraine. The largest corruption scandal in Navy history is in court. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says prosecutors say the man they called Fat Leonard seduced the 7th Fleet.
In 2015, Leonard Glenn Francis pleaded guilty to overcharging the Navy millions of dollars to berth ships around the Western Pacific. The last 5 naval officers charged with helping him are now on trial. Tom Wright talked to Francis for the podcast Fat Leonard.
In the Philippines, they get off. You know, they have these crazy parties with carousels of prostitutes and nonstop drinking. They'd share photos of the women afterwards. They talk crudely about women. All this kind of stuff is in the indictments.
The officers are charged with accepting lavish gifts in exchange for helping Francis steer Navy ships to his ports for years until his arrest in 2013 in San Diego. The feds have held off sentencing Francis while the other trials are pending. Frustrated, Francis went public last year.
He's one of the longest serving cooperating witnesses in this kind of criminal trial in U.S. judicial history because, this has been a big mess for the Navy and for the DOJ because these five they didn't want a public trial. These five have continued to plead not guilty.
More than 24 other officers have pleaded guilty, one just prior to trial getting underway. The question is whether the prosecution's star witness will still carry as much weight after he spoke publicly.
There's been talk of some of the prostitutes actually appearing on the stand, so we're going to wait to see whether that happens.
5 officers pleaded not guilty, including a retired Rear Admiral, Bruce Lovelace. All served on board the USS Blue Ridge, the 7th Fleet's flagship. During opening arguments, their attorneys say their clients didn't have the power to steer Navy contracts to Francis the way prosecutors allege. The trial is expected to take months. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Ballots are being mailed today for next month's special election in Assembly District 80. KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Jacob Ayer says there are 3 candidates vying for the position.
The 80th Assembly District encompasses the southern part of San Diego and most of Chula Vista and National City. It was previously represented in the State Assembly by Democrat Lorena Gonzalez. She resigned in January to lead the California Labor Federation. Democrats David Alvarez and Georgette Gomez and Republican Lincoln Pickard are running to replace her. The special election is scheduled for April 5th, with a runoff on June 7th. Christopher Rice Wilson of Alliance San Diego says that timing can make things a bit confusing.
We want people to understand that this is a special election and that there's another primary election happening in June and then another election happening in November. So we have plenty of opportunities to vote this year. We want to make sure people participate in all of them.
Adding to the confusion, this special election is just to fill out Gonzalez's term, which was set to end in December. There will also be a regular election for the Assembly District 80 seat, with that primary on June 7th and then a runoff in November. And one more complication. The special election applies to the old District 80 boundaries. The regular election is for the district's new boundaries created after the 2020 census. The Registrar of Voters says people can look up their districts at sdvote.com. For all the elections, Rice Wilson says they're encouraging residents to exercise their right to vote by knocking on doors, calling phones, and reaching out to audiences digitally.
Folks are not required to vote by mail. There will be polling locations where people can vote, and people can also go to Registrar's office and vote, and we'll be making sure the residents in the AD80 know of those methods to vote.
The Registrar of Voters provides ballots and all election materials in multiple languages. There's a March 21st deadline to register to vote in the special election, but anyone who misses that date can still register and vote. They just need to go to the Registrar's office or any vote center through Election Day. Again, that's on April 5th. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Tijuana has long been a refuge for people who can't or don't want to pay the sky-high costs to live in San Diego. But now, with San Diego becoming the most unaffordable place in the United States, even more are making the move. And as KPBS border reporter Gustavo Solis explains, this is having a big impact on life in Tijuana.
So we're going to go to the bedrooms. I'm spending the afternoon with Gustavo Chacon, a Tijuana realtor with a flair for showmanship. So this is the main room. And in this, you have a balcony. He's the type of realtor who walks you into a dark master bedroom. Then, with a flourish, so you have a place, opens the curtain to reveal a beautiful view of Tijuana's eastern mountains. You have a balcony where you can actually put a table and some chairs and enjoy the afternoon. Then this type of a house is $950. We're in a 2-bedroom house in TJ's Las Palmas neighborhood. It's got a small yard and a balcony, and it's just 15 minutes away from the border. In San Diego, that $950 a month might get you a studio. Tijuana has always been a place where Americans can live affordably while continuing to work in San Diego. But in 2022, America's finest city also became its most unaffordable, according to Ojo Labs. It's one of the reasons why the stream of people heading south has become a flood. Out of 10 people that call us, 7 of them are from the United States.
Jill Holstein is a professor at San Diego State University. She moved to Tijuana after the 2007 financial crisis.
We have that luxury, really, of living on the border and being able to sort of have it both ways. You know, pay low rent and have a lower cost of living in Tijuana, and then, you know, have the powerful earning power of the United States.
She lost her North Park condo in the subprime mortgage crisis, but that misfortune gave her an opportunity to make a move she'd wanted to make for a long time. Holstein went out of her way to befriend Tijuana residents instead of limiting herself to the English-only crowds. She quickly became involved in Tijuana's art scene and is still to this day.
Feeling like I'm not just here to take advantage of the cheap rent, but I'm here to participate in what's going on in the society.
When Holstein moved to Tijuana in 2011, her children thought it was edgy. Her coworkers thought it was more quirky and unusual. But over the last few years, and especially during the pandemic, Holstein says that friends and coworkers have been hitting her up for advice.
Explain to me how you did this, because I'm really thinking about it, but I don't understand what to do. I don't know, like, how much should I pay for rent, and, you know, where should I go?
Scott Asher is among the new arrivals. He's a freelancer, works as a digital artist, makes YouTube videos, and is into NFTs. He went 18 months without finding steady work during the pandemic.
It was a solution that I needed. I was in the market for, right? I need a place to live, right? So it's definitely a solution for a place to live.
Asher is paying $550 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment in Ensenada, about an hour and a half away from the border. He couldn't find anything as nice for that price in Tijuana, let alone San Diego. And it's not just lower rent. Asher says he pays less for food, utilities, cell phone bill, dental visits, and even car insurance.
I don't know what place I'd be able to afford in California.
But every time someone like Asher makes the move south, there's an impact. The neighborhoods become less affordable for the people already living there. Chacon, the local realtor, says that what's been happening in San Diego for decades is now happening in Tijuana.
The people who make less are having a hard time to buy properties where to rent at. So, and also adding the shortage of production of housing.
That home with a balcony, the one going for $950 a month, it rented for $750 just a few years ago. Tijuana landlords know that they can make a lot more money by renting to Americans, and residents who live in upper middle class neighborhoods near the border are seeing their rents go up. But unlike Americans, people already living in Tijuana cannot simply cross the border to find more affordable housing. Instead, they're priced out and going to the outskirts of town, in neighborhoods with fewer jobs, less public services, and more crime.
It is something that's going to affect a lot of people, middle class and lower class and working class. And it is going to affect them in the long run because the prices are going to go higher. And same thing is going to happen that's happening in San Diego to Tijuana. But the only difference is that they won't have a place where they can move to, except the exterior of the cities, where there's not a lot of development.
This is Gustavo Solis for KPBS News.
This week, sand will be piped out of Cardiff State Beach by Caltrans and Sandag crews. The sand will be dredged from the San Elijo Lagoon for beach nourishment efforts in Cardiff. Kim Smith with Sandag says the project benefits Cardiff Beach visitors and the natural habitats of the San Elijo Lagoon.
Good for the grunion, it's good for the invertebrates, so there's a lot of good benefits by us putting the sand on the beach.
The beach will remain open, but nearby residents and businesses may expect an increase in traffic, construction activity, and traffic control signs. Dredging is ongoing for 24 hours, and hauling will take place Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The project is expected to be completed by April. A study co-written by a San Diego scientist shows the flood that nearly overwhelmed California's Oroville Dam was a result of global warming. KPBS science and technology reporter Thomas Fudge tells us about the 2017 event and what caused it.
The Oroville Dam in Northern California is the nation's tallest dam, and it creates the state's second-largest reservoir. On February of 2017, an atmospheric river dumped a huge amount of snow, then a huge amount of rain into the reservoir's watershed. The intensity of the flooding that threatened the dam was the result of a warming atmosphere.
Rainfall from that particular atmospheric river was enhanced by about 11 to 15% by climate change compared to what it would have been in pre-industrial times.
Alexander Gershinoff is a research meteorologist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. He is co-author of an article about the epic event in the journal Earth's Future. Atmospheric rivers are bands of water vapor in the atmosphere that bring up to 50% of California's precipitation. Gershinoff says the ability of air to hold moisture increases with temperature, and climate modeling projections show that atmospheric warming dramatically increased the rainfall that flooded the Oroville Dam's reservoir.
It illustrates very well the type of hydroclimate change that we expect to see with climate change in California, specifically less frequent precipitation, but more intense extremes due to atmospheric rivers.
Gershinoff says climate change means California's water supply is becoming more dependent on atmospheric rivers, which are becoming more intense. That means people need to get better at forecasting them.
That means longer lead times and better accuracy in terms of their specific target zone.
Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
The Amazon rainforest is changing, and it might be near a tipping point where it will be less like a lush forest teeming with insect and animal life and more like a grassy savanna. In a study published today in Nature, scientists say they see signs of what they call, quote, resilience loss in a majority of the rainforest. The study looked at satellite images taken month by month over 2 decades. The findings show the rainforest is losing its ability to recover from things like logging activity, droughts, and fires. And this affects the rest of the planet because the rainforest mitigates climate change.
Well, we have a few days of quiet weather in the forecast here in Southern California before the next storm begins to press southward later in the week. Along with that, small chance for a couple showers later this week, but again, it's not going to be an all that impressive storm system, unfortunately, and so a chance for no showers is likely higher than the chance for any widespread rain. As we head into tonight, temperatures fall back down into the mid-30s in Oceanside and Escondido, upper 30s for you in El Cajon, low 40s into Borrego Spring. Tuesday, cooler air really continues across the interior Southwest, but we're looking at another pleasant day here into much of California, including for us down into San Diego. Temperatures are going to be in the upper 60s, maybe a hair or two below average, but steady trend upward, low 70s in El Cajon, mid 60s for you out towards Ramona. Then Wednesday, that's when things begin to change here. You'll notice the snow and the rain-snow mix popping up here across the Four Corners, breezy winds picking up here across southern Nevada and out towards Arizona and New Mexico. But Wednesday into Thursday, temperatures drop big time here across the interior. We may feel that in some of the deserts and the mountains, but near the coast, we're not going to see temperatures that are going to be dropping big time as we head into Thursday. Near the coast, you'll notice temperatures really only cool off a couple of degrees with that possibility of a few showers hanging around, a little bit below average on Thursday, and then an upward trend Friday and into Saturday with more in the way of sunshine. Further inland, temperatures cool off into the mid-60s by the time we get to Thursday, morning shower possible. Otherwise, temperatures will be rebounding into the 70s on Friday and even upper 70s as we head through the weekend into Saturday. In the mountains, temperatures fall from the mid to upper 40s Tuesday and Wednesday into the 30s on Thursday. So that's one of the spots where we could see a little bit more of a dramatic change, shower chance for you in the evening too. And in the deserts, temperatures here look to bottom out in the upper 60s by the time we get to Friday, but recovering into the 70s on Saturday with just a couple showers possible there on Thursday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
It appears that even mild COVID-19 infections can damage the brain, particularly the area related to smell. And that is according to a study published today in the journal Nature. Scientists compared brain imaging from around 800 people. About half had COVID and half did not. Researchers found that the brains of those who had COVID had a greater loss of gray matter and abnormalities in the brain tissue. The study's author plans on doing brain images of participants in 1 or 2 years to see if the damage goes away. A group of attorneys general in several states have opened an investigation into whether the video sharing platform TikTok is harmful for children. An investigation last year looked into Instagram for similar concerns. Mandy Gaither has what parents need to know to keep kids safe.
Social media in the spotlight once again. An investigation into TikTok follows a similar one launched in November by a group of state attorneys general and whether these platforms are harmful to children.
It's really a wake-up call, the power of social media on such a young population.
Dr. Mohammed Al-Dasari, director of the Center for Pediatric Neurosciences at Cleveland Clinic, says social media can affect children's mental health and may even cause or worsen stress and anxiety.
These young minds are very suggestible. They're very vulnerable to these exposures.
Al-Dasari says parents and kids need to be aware of potential dangers. If a child is already suffering from a mental health issue like depression or anxiety, there's a higher risk of adverse effects of social media. Consider limiting exposure, and parents should talk to kids about what they're seeing online.
I think it's something that we really have to address for the well-being and the safety of the young generation.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, calls grow for a no-fly zone in Ukraine. What that would mean for the U.S. and other nations. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. San Diego County keeps smashing gas price records. Today, the average price for a gallon of regular is $5.38. That's nearly 28 cents more than we were paying just last Friday, and almost $1.60 more than 1 year ago. San Diego State University changed its mask policy today. Students will no longer have to wear them at indoor events and meetings. However, they will still have to wear masks inside their classrooms. Meanwhile, San Diego Unified School District announced it's lifting its mask mandate on April 4th when students returned from spring break. And new affordable housing is being built across San Diego with easy access to transit. Locations for the Bridge to Home project include more than 600 units in San Ysidro, downtown, City Heights, and Rancho Bernardo. Some will include a mix of services for those experiencing homelessness. The first batch will open next year. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.